Adam here from Northwest Slackline. I just got done rethreading 180 feet of RAGEline, and I wanted briefly to talk about what threading a line means and the one or two pitfalls that you might run into when you do it. There are already some pretty decent videos on YouTube for how to thread a line, so I don't think I need to show a whole lot of that. I just wanted to sort of talk about the one or two mistakes that aren't mentioned in those videos. So as you're probably aware, a lot of nylon lines and some polyester lines, so here's a nylon line, are tubular, meaning that they sort of open up like a hose. There's an inside to them that you can access. And then here's a type of polyester tubular line that also, if I squeeze it right, will sort of open up and you can see the inside. So when it comes to those lines, since you can put something inside them, you could thread a thinner line inside them. And then the idea is that the strength of the outer line plus the strength of the inner line through some sort of complex equation that no one quite knows will add together and make the whole total line stronger than either single piece by themselves, but probably not just a linear, 2 + 2 = 4 kind of equation. Threaded lines have mostly fallen out of favor nowadays because they're sort of newer, specialized, developed just for slacklining types of lines. But for trick lining, like with the RAGEline, and for some other specific types, threading is still somewhat widely used. So if you need to thread your own line, there are just one or two pitfalls. The method that I like to use is using a dowel or a rod or something that you sort of shove into the line and scrunch the line down on it and then pull the line off the other end. Usually I attach the line that I'm threading, the sort of core skinnier line, directly to that dowel. One major pitfall is that it can come off. So it needs to be attached really well. I actually drill a hole through the dowel and sew it on. If you duct tape it, it will eventually pull off. And that will be a source of much frustration because either you have to rethread the entire line or you have to cut it where it pulled off. And inevitably it always pulls off, 80% of the way there. So for instance, I've left the part where it popped out of the RAGEline on, and you can see that I sewed it. So that's, I made a notch and then drilled a hole and sewed it on. So that's one sort of good tip I have for you. Some people like to thread just the dowel with a piece of really strong fishing line through and then pull the fishing line with the core attached to it. The only problem with that is your core line is more likely to twist when you do that. And if you get a twist in the core line, your life is not going to be good trying to fix that. It's sometimes easier just to start over. So sort of pitfall number 2 is don't let it get twisted as it goes in. They need to stay, flat and mated well. And then the biggest pitfall, maybe the one I should have mentioned first, so it's pitfall number 1, is that often people will use some sort of skinny metal rod, something like this, where the end is, this is an exaggeration, but the end is kind of sharp. And you would think, even with sort of squared ends that are rounded where you couldn't hurt yourself with them, you would think that would be safe. But in fact, it actually separates the weave on the webbing if you're not careful. So when you pull the webbing, when you scrunch it down onto the rod, you're going to want the webbing to come straight on. You're not going to want it, let's see if I can, you're not going to want it laying down like this. You're going to want the webbing suspended straight out so that it comes nicely onto the rod. And the more the end of the rod is tapered, so the webbing can't bind or catch on it and separate weave, the better off you are. The reason I was rethreading this RAGEline was to show you folks this because when it was threaded originally, which I didn't do, it actually did separate in some places. And I don't know how that affects the strength of the webbing, but I'm sort of anal about just everything looking pretty, and so that kind of thing annoys me. So the way to best get around that is just go to Home Depot and buy a wooden dowel that's exactly the right size to fit inside your webbing. If you're using 1 1/4, that's a 5/8 dowel. If you're using 1 inch, I can't remember offhand, but I'm guessing it's a 1/2 probably dowel, and then just sand the end down so it's nice and rounded. And then you scrunch it on and pull it down and just repeat. It's going to take, I don't know, once you get good, probably 15 or 20 minutes for 100 feet, and it really helps to have someone else there to help you, but you can do it by yourself if you're really determined. If you have any questions about how to thread, drop me an email, but otherwise, hopefully you're well on your way.